July 15th, 1410. Dawn. A field in northern Poland, near the villages of Grunwald and Tannenberg. Two armies face each other. One side, the Teutonic Knights, the most disciplined, best funded, most technologically advanced military force in Central Europe. White mantles, black crosses, decades of undefeated warfare behind them. The other side, a coalition of Poles, Lithuanians, Russians, Tatars, and assorted mercenaries. An army that, on paper, had no business winning anything. By sunset, the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order was dead. His entire command structure had collapsed. 50 of his top knights were killed in a single afternoon. The order never recovered. It was one of the greatest military upsets of the medieval world. Now, what if it hadn't been? What if the Teutonic Knights had walked into that field with two pieces of equipment that didn't exist for another 500 years? A radio and a thermal imager? Not nuclear weapons, not aircraft, just two modest tools of information. Stay with me, because the answer changes everything. The Teutonic Order was not primarily a religious institution. It was a corporation. A military corporation, granted, but a corporation nonetheless. It had shareholders, annual reports in the form of papal endorsements, a legal department skilled enough to turn a temporary invitation into permanent territorial ownership, and a ruthless, systematic approach to expansion that most modern multinationals would recognize instantly. They arrived in Prussia in 1226. A Polish duke named Conrad of Masovia had a problem. Pagan Baltic tribes on his border who refused to convert, refused to pay taxes, and refused to die conveniently. He invited the Teutonic Knights to handle it. This was, in retrospect, one of the more consequential real estate decisions in European history. The Knights handled it. Over 50 years, through a combination of cavalry raids, siege warfare, and what we would today call ethnic cleansing, they converted the native Prussian population, the ones that survived, into serfs. They built castles, they built cities, they built a state. By the early 1400s, the Teutonic Order controlled the entire Baltic coastline from the Vistula to the Gulf of Finland. They had a navy, they had trade routes, they had Gdansk, one of the richest ports in Northern Europe. And they had a problem. The problem was called Lithuania. Lithuania, in 1410, was the largest country in Europe by territory. It was also pagan, or rather, it had just converted to Christianity, inconveniently removing the Teutonic Knights' primary justification for attacking it. The order attacked anyway. Habit is a powerful thing. What they did not fully account for was the tactical intelligence of one man, Vytautas, Grand Duke of Lithuania. And this is where our story actually begins. Every battle, at its core, is an information problem. Who is where? How many? Moving in which direction? At what speed? In 1410, this information traveled at the speed of a horse, or a man on foot, or, if you were the Samogitians, a chain of signal fires lit on hilltops, one after another, passing the news of a Teutonic advance like a very slow telegraph. The Samogitians, incidentally, had been fighting the order for decades and had developed what was, for its time, a reasonably sophisticated early warning network. We will return to this detail. The Teutonic Grandmaster, Ulrich von Jungingen, was not an unintelligent man. He had scouts. He received reports. he made calculations. His calculations were wrong. On the morning of July 15th, his army stood in a strong defensive position on high ground, waiting for the Polish-Lithuanian forces to attack uphill. The classic setup for a medieval defensive victory. The attack didn't come. For 2 hours, both armies stood in the morning heat, waiting. Von Jungingen grew impatient. He sent provocateurs, 2 heralds carrying swords to the Polish and Lithuanian commanders. An insult, a taunt. Come fight us. It worked. The coalition advanced. What happened next was the core tactical disaster of the Teutonic position. The Lithuanian cavalry on the right wing, under Vytautas, appeared to break and flee. This was almost certainly a feigned retreat, a classic steppe warfare tactic borrowed from the Mongols, designed to draw the enemy out of position. The Teutonic right wing followed them, out of their defensive formation, into open ground. They were surrounded and destroyed. Von Jungingen tried to organize a counterattack with his reserve, a final, desperate charge. He rode into the battle himself. He died. Now, let's give him a radio. A modern military radio, let's say something equivalent to a standard VHF field radio, the kind any mid-century army would have used, has a range of roughly 20 to 50 kilometers. It transmits in real time. It does not get tired, does not get lost, and does not arrive 40 minutes after the information is still relevant. Here is what changes at Grunwald. First, the feigned retreat fails completely. The moment the Lithuanian cavalry begins its rout, Von Jungingen's field commander on the right wing calls it in. "Sir, they're running." A second voice from the elevated center position with a wider view responds, "Negative. They're maintaining spacing. Look at the dust pattern. This is controlled movement." The pursuit is called off. The Lithuanian cavalry rides out, turns around, finds no one has followed them, and rides back. The trap springs on empty ground. Second, Von Jungingen's reserve moves where it is needed, not where it used to be needed 5 minutes ago. Medieval command is fundamentally reactive. By the time a messenger reaches the Grand Master, the situation has changed. He commits forces to a position that no longer exists. With radio communication, he sees the battle as a living system rather than a series of delayed reports. He adjusts. He holds. Third, and this is the part people don't consider, the coalition's own communication collapses under pressure. The Polish-Lithuanian alliance was not a unified command structure. Jogaila, the Polish king, commanded from the rear and was, by most accounts, not an aggressive battlefield commander. Vytautas was aggressive and personally led cavalry charges. They disagreed about tactics. They had no reliable way to coordinate in real time. The Teutonic Knights, with radio, suddenly have a command advantage their enemies cannot match. Not a weapon advantage, not a numbers advantage. An information advantage. The battle grinds into a different shape, longer, bloodier on both sides. But the catastrophic collapse of the Teutonic right wing, which historically ended the battle in an afternoon, does not happen. Now add the thermal imager. The night before Grunwald, the Polish-Lithuanian army moved into position under cover of darkness. This was not unusual. Medieval armies routinely maneuvered at night to conceal their dispositions, their numbers, and their intentions. A thermal imaging device, a device that reads heat signatures, that sees human bodies and horses as bright shapes against a cold night landscape, eliminates this entirely. The Teutonic scouts, equipped with even a single thermal imager, watch the entire Allied army deploy in real time. They count. They identify the cavalry concentrations. They locate Vytautas's Lithuanian wing, which is where the real tactical threat is. By dawn, von Jungingen knows exact enemy numbers, approximate composition, tactical dispositions. He adjusts his line accordingly. The right wing, which historically was the weak point exploited by the Lithuanian cavalry, is reinforced. The defensive position is optimized for the attack he now knows is coming, and from which direction. But here is the deeper consequence, and this is where the history of the entire Baltic region pivots. If the Teutonic Order wins at Grunwald, the Order survives as a major territorial power. The 13 Years' War, which historically dismantled the Order's Prussian state piece by piece, either does not happen or happens on entirely different terms. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which historically emerged from the ruins of Teutonic power as the dominant force in Central Europe, does not emerge in the same form. And without the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth as a counterweight, the expansion of Muscovite Russia westward faces a different kind of opposition, or none. We have changed the information technology of one battle, and the geopolitical map of Eastern Europe for the next 3 centuries shifts. Let us return to the Samogitians and their signal fires, because there is something genuinely remarkable here that tends to get lost in the larger narrative. The Samogitians were a Lithuanian tribal group, non-Christian, lightly organized, militarily outmatched by the Teutonic Knights in almost every conventional category. Worse armor, worse weapons, smaller numbers. They developed, in response, a network of hilltop beacons across their territory. When Teutonic forces crossed the border, fires were lit. The signal propagated across the landscape in minutes. Villages evacuated, warriors assembled, ambush positions were prepared. This is, functionally, an early warning and rapid response communication network. They understood the principle. They were limited by the available technology. The Teutonic Knights, for all their engineering sophistication, they built some of the most advanced castles of the medieval world, never developed an equivalent. They relied on the speed of messengers and the authority of the chain of command. The people they were systematically destroying had, in their own way, solved the same problem they hadn't. There is a lesson here about necessity and invention that is somewhat unflattering to the side wearing the better armor. The Teutonic Order did not lose at Grunwald because of inferior weapons or inferior courage. Their knights were among the finest heavy cavalry in the world. They lost because they made decisions based on incomplete, delayed, and partly fabricated information. This is how most battles are lost. This is how most things are lost. The radio and the thermal imager do not make soldiers braver or stronger. They make the commander's mental model of reality more accurate. They compress the gap between what is happening and what the decision maker believes is happening. The medieval period did not lack intelligent generals. It lacked bandwidth. And the terrifying implication, if you allow yourself to sit with it, is that somewhere right now, a decision is being made, a battle is being fought, an institution is collapsing. For the exact same reason. Not because the people involved are fools, but because the information arriving at the top of the command structure is late, filtered, and wrong. The Teutonic Knights had castles, legal scholars, and a balance sheet that would have impressed a Renaissance banker. They did not have a second opinion arriving in real time. They lost an afternoon, and then they lost everything.